about you, but I have a ton of unused art supplies just lying around. Now, I've just come off maternity leave, and in the UK, you get 12 months maternity leave, but 9 of those are paid. So you have 3 months unpaid. So about 6 months ago, I decided I was going to sell my unused art supplies, as well as looking on Facebook Marketplace for deals to resell on eBay. So in this video, I'm going to share with you exactly how much I made and what I sold and why. So let's dive straight into what I sold. The first selection of things are paints that I have not been using. The first item was this set of Liquitex paints, just small 22mm sets. Now, I don't really use acrylic paint. I have a set of big tubes and I mainly mix my colours. So I don't need all these little tubes in all these different colours. So I mainly use the acrylic paints for practice before moving on to the paint I'm going to use, which is a vinyl based paint called Flash Paint. And these come in little glass jars and I much prefer them because they have a matte finish. The same as the acrylic gouache, which I'm showing you here. This is matte and I much prefer that look compared to acrylic. These sold for £21. So I was pretty chuffed with that because I'd had these for years. Now, these are watercolour sticks from the Winsor & Newton Professional line. Now, I just don't use them. I use tube paints and I squeeze them into pans or into palettes. So they were just a waste for me. I got £27 for these because I think they are now not made anymore. The next lot of stuff I sold was student grade paints. I just don't use them anymore. I have professional paints, I prefer them. So I sold a Cotman set and a Van Gogh set. And there's no point in me keeping these things around. I am not going to use them. I am well into using my professional paints. I prefer them. They've got more pigment. They reactivate really well. I love the colours. They're more vibrant than the student grade. So I thought I'd sell my student grades on to a home that is actually going to use them. For the Winsor & Newton set, I got £15.25. And for the Van Gogh set, I got £15, which I think is really brilliant. The next thing I sold was actually some professional paints in my initial palette that I first used when I was starting out. I use different palettes now, mostly ones I've made myself or travel palettes. So I wasn't using this palette anymore, so I sold it for £15, which again I was very pleased with. I also sold some small Winsor & Newton professional pans that I had duplicates of. I got £18 for those. And I sold some tubes that I had duplicates for. Some of them weren't full, some of them were colours that I didn't like. I got £10 for those, which is not great, but I'm happy. I wasn't going to use them paints. I also sold some gouache, some student grade gouache that I was gifted that I wasn't going to use, and some duplicate tubes of Winsor & Newton's gouache. I already had those colours, so I don't need them. Get rid of them. The student grade gouache I sold for £6 and the Winsor & Newton professional gouache tubes I sold for £12. I also sold some Brusho. Now, I love Brusho. It's a bit like watercolour, but it's powdered and it is so creative. I put little pins in the top so it's a bit less messy because it's a very messy medium, and when you put it on top of water, it just explodes into colour. It's absolutely beautiful. Each colour has multiple colour pigments in it, so when you just shake it down, like with that green one, you'll see that green and the yellow with the black. You've got these browns and oranges. They're just beautiful, and if you want to use them more like traditional watercolour, you can use a brush and mix them out on the page or mix them out in your palette. I got £25 for the duplicate pots of Brusho that I already had because I already have a full set. Now onto palettes. I make my own palettes now since I started doing pottery, so about a year and a half ago. I've made them how I want them, how I like them. So the ceramic palettes that I was using previously, I don't need them anymore, so I sold them. I got £20 for 2 palettes, both Winsor & Newton. One was chipped and one was fine. I also sold these stacking mixing palettes because I think they're more for ink and I just wasn't going to use them. And I got £20 for those, so I was really pleased with that. Moving on to pens and ink. I sold a selection of coloured inks and some brush pens with different inks in, just because I just use black ink at the moment, just pigmented black ink. Carbon ink is the main one I use. I sold these inks for £10 and pretty pleased with that. I also sold some Rotring technical drawing pens. Now I do use these. I've got 2 that I use. There was a 0.25 and a 0.4 that I use. I really like them, and I saw this bundle on Facebook for £5, so I bought them and sold them on, and I got £41 for them. So I was really pleased with that because I only put £5 into it. I also got some white ink that I bought for £2 and I sold it on for £10, so 5 times profit on that. You can't complain. Next we have my pastels and pencils. Now when an art shop was closing down, I bought loads of their pastels and accidentally picked up some duplicates. Now I have plenty in my set, there is no point having duplicates, so I sold them on for £44.50. I also had some pan pastels that I used for figure drawing, but when I bought a set of my own full pan pastels, once I knew I was invested in that medium, I sold those initial ones on for £27. I also had a few oil pastels that I had duplicates of. Again, why do I need these? I've got enough. Sell them on. I got £4 for those. Every little helps. Moving on, the art shop near me was closing down, so I bought some of their Prismacolor pencils for 50p each, and I managed to sell on the ones that I bought for a profit £15.50. So I at least doubled my money, if not more. I also had an old set of watercolour pencils that I used to use, and I have a new set of watercolour pencils, so I don't need both sets. So I sold the old ones on for £7, which I was pretty happy with. Now, selling paper has been my most profitable venture. There was a sketchbook company that was closing down, so they were selling glassine paper and pastel paper. I bought everything they had for around £100, including the postage. I use glassine paper for my figure drawing, but I've got so much I'm never going to use it all. So I started selling the glassine paper and I made £198 selling it in packs of 50. I also sold some of the pastel paper because again, I've got so much that would take me probably a lifetime to use. So I sell bundles of 25 and so far I've made £117 just selling, and I've got more than enough to last me. For my others category, these were just bits and bobs I had hanging around. This was Transfix for brush over. I don't even know what it's for. Sold it £6.50. A flex curve ruler for drawing curves. Sold it for £4. Some compasses. I'm never going to use these. I draw circles freehand. Sold them for £6. And some silver leaf paper that I actually wish I kept, but sold it for £6. So in total, over the last 6 months, I have made £706.81 selling these unused art supplies. And that is a lot of money for me. So really the takeaway from this is if you've got a load of unused art supplies lying around, sell them, get rid of them, move on. Think of how much money you could have for new art supplies you're actually going to use, or just for life in general. And keep an eye out on Facebook Marketplace or eBay for anything cheap or a deal that you can get to sell on. I hope you found this video useful or interesting, and I will see you in the next one.